By 421 BC, the Peloponnesian War had already lasted 10 long years. The conflict exhausted Athens and Sparta, the two major powers of ancient Greece. The countryside was devastated. The cities were suffering from shortages of food and resources, and the population was tired of continuous warfare. The political landscape in both cities had changed. In Athens, Cleon, the leader who advocated continuing the war, had been killed in the Battle of Amphipolis in 422 BC. His passing left a vacuum in the city's warmongering leadership. In Sparta, General Brasidas also lost his life in the same battle. These losses opened the door to more moderate voices on both sides. In Athens, Nicias, a respected politician and general, gained influence. Nicias was known for his caution and preference for stability. He saw war as an unnecessary risk to Athens' prosperity and believed it was time to seek peace. At an assembly in Athens, Nicias took the floor. "Citizens of Athens, we have fought bravely for years, but at what cost? Our fields are wasteland. Our men fall in distant lands. It is time to seek peace and regain our strength." His words reached many war-weary Athenians. However, not everyone agreed. Some ambitious young men, like Alcibiades, saw war as an opportunity to gain glory and power. But for the time being, the voice of moderation prevailed. In Sparta, the situation was similar. The loss of Brasidas had left the Spartans without their most effective general. In addition, the city faced internal problems. The Iolothians, Sparta's subject population, had rebelled, taking advantage of the chaos of war. Spartan leaders feared that a prolonged war would weaken their control over their territory. Negotiations began cautiously. Both sides sent emissaries to discuss the terms of a possible agreement. The discussions were long and complicated. Each city wanted to secure its interests and those of its allies. One of the most difficult points was the fate of the cities and territories conquered during the war. Athens wanted to recover Amphipolis, a strategic colony in northern Greece. Sparta, for its part, sought the release of Spartan prisoners captured years earlier on the island of Sphacteria. The discussions went on for weeks. Envoys went back and forth between Athens and Sparta, bringing proposals and counter-proposals. Finally, after so much debate, an agreement was reached. The main terms of the treaty, which would later become known as the Peace of Nicias, included a 50-year truce between Athens and Sparta, the mutual return of territories captured during the war, the exchange of prisoners, respect for alliances existing before the conflict, and an agreement to settle future disputes by arbitration. The treaty was a compromise. Neither side got everything it wanted, but both saw advantages in the agreement. For Athens, it meant a chance to recover and strengthen its position without the constant threat of invasion. For Sparta, it was a chance to consolidate its internal control and prepare for future challenges. In the spring of 421 BC, representatives of both cities met for the official signing of the treaty. The ceremony was solemn, marked by sacrifices to the gods and oaths on both sides. Nicias, as the prime mover of the agreement in Athens, played a prominent role in the ceremony. Addressing those present, he said, "May this peace bring prosperity to our cities and all Greece. May the gods bear witness to our commitment to peace." News of the signing of the treaty spread quickly throughout Greece. In Athens and Sparta, people celebrated in the streets. After years of war, the prospect of peace was welcomed by many. However, not everyone was satisfied. Some allies on both sides felt betrayed or ignored in the agreement. In Corinth and Thebes, allies of Sparta, there was discontent over what they considered excessive concessions to Athens. In Athens, while most celebrated, voices such as Alcibiades warned that the peace would not last. Despite these dissenting voices, the Peace of Nicias marked the official end of the first phase of the Peloponnesian War. For the time being, the guns fell silent, and the warships remained anchored in the harbors. The following months saw an increase in trade between Greek cities. Families separated by the war were reunited. In the fields, farmers returned to planting without fear that their crops would be destroyed by enemy armies. Nicias, the architect of peace, gained prestige in Athens. Many saw him as the savior of the city, the man who had brought peace after years of conflict. However, it would soon become apparent that keeping the peace would be as difficult as achieving it. The Peace of Nicias, though welcomed by many, was in reality a fragile agreement. The root causes of the conflict between Athens and Sparta, the rivalry for dominance of Greece, the differences in their political systems, and their imperial ambitions were still present. The Peace of Nicias, though promising at its inception, was soon challenged by a series of minor conflicts that undermined its stability. The treaty, signed in the hope of ending a decade of war, faced obstacles almost from the beginning. One of the most significant problems was the dispute over Amphipolis. This colony, strategically located on the Aegean coast, was of great importance to Athens. Under the terms of the treaty, Sparta was to return it to the Athenians. However, the Spartans did not fulfill this obligation, which generated frustration and distrust in Athens. The Athenian general Nikias, who had worked tirelessly to achieve peace, found himself in a difficult position, trying to maintain the agreement while facing criticism for the lack of progress in the recovery of Amphipolis. Meanwhile, within the Peloponnesian League, led by Sparta, altercations arose. Some of Sparta's most powerful allies, such as Corinth and Boeotia, refused to sign the peace treaty. These states saw the agreement as a betrayal of their interests and feared that Sparta had abandoned them in favor of an understanding with Athens. This situation created tensions within the Spartan alliance and limited Sparta's ability to fully comply with the terms of the treaty. In Athens, the politician Alcibiades began to gain influence. Young, charismatic, and ambitious, Alcibiades saw peace as an obstacle to his and Athens' aspirations. Capitalizing on discontent over the Amphipolis situation and other treaty breaches, Alcibiades advocated a more aggressive policy. His arguments found a receptive audience among Athenians who felt that peace had not lived up to its promises. In 420 BC, Athens took a bold step by allying with Argos, Mantinea, and Alcide. This new coalition, while not directly violating the terms of the Peace of Nicias, was viewed with alarm by Sparta. The Spartans interpreted it as an attempt by Athens to encircle and isolate them in the Peloponnese, their territory. This diplomatic maneuver significantly increased tensions between the two powers. The situation came to a head in 418 BC with the Battle of Mantinea. Although this conflict did not directly involve Athens and Sparta, it had a significant impact on the balance of power in Greece. The battle pitted Sparta against the coalition led by Argos, which included troops from Athens. The Spartans, under the leadership of King Agis II, won a decisive victory, reasserting their military supremacy in the Peloponnese. The Spartan victory at Mantinea had far-reaching consequences. It strengthened Sparta's position within its league and weakened the new Athenian alliance. In Athens, the defeat of its allies generated debates about the effectiveness of its foreign policy and increased criticism of the strategy of Nicias. During this period, minor conflicts also arose in other parts of the Greek world. Territorial disputes, commercial rivalries, and struggles for political influence continued to occur, despite the peace treaty. These constant frictions kept alive the distrust between the Greek states and hindered any attempt to consolidate a lasting peace. As the years passed, it became increasingly clear that the Peace of Nicias was more a pause in hostilities than a true end to the conflict. Leaders on both sides, aware of the underlying tensions, began to prepare for the possibility that war might resume at any moment. In this climate of uncertainty and distrust, both Athens and Sparta continued to strengthen their military and diplomatic positions. Peace, which had once been celebrated as the end of an era of conflict, was gradually becoming the prelude to a new phase of war. The Peace of Nicias, which had maintained an uneasy truce between Athens and Sparta since 421 BC, began to slowly crumble in the following years. Despite initial intentions to maintain peace for 50 years, The political realities and ambitions of both city-states soon tested the limits of the agreement. In Athens, the debate over a possible expedition to Sicily reached its peak. Alcibiades, a charismatic and ambitious Athenian politician, became the main advocate of this venture. In the Athenian assembly, Alcibiades argued passionately, "Sicily offers us not only riches, but the opportunity to expand our empire and weaken our enemies." This attracted the attention of ambitious young Athenians, eager for the glory and profits that such an expedition promised. However, Nicias, the architect of the peace that bore his name, strongly objected. In a speech to the assembly, he warned, "To embark on this Sicilian adventure is to risk all that we have achieved. Our real enemies are here, in Greece, not across the sea." Despite his warnings, the assembly voted in favor of the expedition, a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. News of the Athenian preparations for the expedition to Sicily reached Sparta quickly. Spartan leaders saw this as a clear violation of the spirit, if not the letter, of the peace treaty. At an emergency meeting of the Spartan council, King Athenias declared, "The Athenians showed their true nature. While they spoke of peace, they planned conquest. We must act now to protect not only Sparta, but all of Greece." Meanwhile, Sparta's allies, especially Corinth, were increasingly pressing for decisive action against Athens. The Corinthians, concerned about their commercial interests in Sicily, sent emissaries to Sparta. In response to these pressures, Sparta began to quietly mobilize its forces. Although war had not yet been officially declared, the Spartans began preparations for a possible conflict. The defenses of allied cities were reinforced, new troops were trained, and plans were laid to disrupt Athenian supply lines. The political climate throughout Greece became increasingly tense. Cities that had remained neutral during the peace were now forced to choose sides. Thebes, Athens' traditional rival, strengthened its ties with Sparta. Other cities, fearing the growing power of the Peloponnesian League led by Sparta, sought protection from Athens. In this atmosphere of growing hostility, even minor incidents assumed disproportionate importance. A clash between Athenian and Corinthian trading ships near Corcyra nearly provoked open warfare. Although the incident was resolved diplomatically, it made clear how fragile the peace was. As 414 BC drew to a close, the Peace of Nicias existed in name only. Athens and Sparta were effectively in a state of Cold War, with both sides actively preparing for the conflict they considered inevitable. Athens' decision to proceed with the expedition to Sicily, despite warnings from Nicias and others, would be the final catalyst for the full resumption of hostilities. This action not only unleashed the wrath of Sparta and her allies, but also divided Athens itself, setting the stage for one of the most turbulent and decisive periods of the Peloponnesian War. With peace broken, Sparta and Athens prepared for a new confrontation. Negotiations and attempts at reconciliation were in the past, and both cities knew that only war would decide the future of Greece. Nicias, who had fought to maintain peace, found himself politically isolated, while Alcibiades and other militaristic leaders took control of Athenian politics. With the Peace of Nicias in ruins, Athens and Sparta prepared to resume their conflict. However, before directly confronting each other, Athens would turn its gaze westward to a wealthy and distant island. This decision would usher in a new phase in the war, one that would test the limits of Athenian power as never before. This video has been created for the History and Mythology channel. Thank you for your interest in this important period in Greek history. See you next time.